we're falling in love.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. Welcome to the first meeting where you don't have to listen to me talk the entire time. We're going to start things off with the four-way test, prayer, and pledge led by Amy Baltz, and then guest introductions with Grant Cox. Amy?
Hello, everyone. Let's start with our four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Let us bow our heads. Help us, as Rotarians and humans, to do good. Help us, as Rotarians and humans, to be honest and ethical in all our dealings. Help us as Rotarians and humans to serve others. And help us as Rotarians and humans to faithfully fulfill our obligations as neighbors to our community, our nation, and the world. Amen. And our Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We have a few guests here today, and if when I call your name, if you could stand and remain standing with the member who brought you. First, we have Leslie Oslitza, and she is a guest of Rachel O'Neill. Then we have Nate Vipikar, who is a guest of Ashbin Vipikar. And Eric Elizondo, guest of Danielle Colley, and Kelsey Overby, who is a guest of both Natalie Gadati and Elizabeth Small, both. We also have Robbie Wilson, who is a guest of Ross Burnett, and we have Bob Birch, a guest of Robert Birch. Welcome to all our guests, and we're glad you could join us.
Thank you, Amy and Grant. And thank you to our greeters, Drew Harper, Slater Corbin, Maha Witherington, and Rick Fleetwood for those smiling faces up front. Next, we will welcome new membership chair Ross Burnett to the stage to introduce our first new member of the year. Ross?
Thank you, Jason. Good afternoon, Rotarians. What an exciting day it is. We've got our first of many new members under President Jason Chaco. Colin Crawford was appointed Dean of the UA Little Rock William H. Bowen School of Law in 2023, having previously served as Dean in law schools in Louisville, Kentucky, and San Francisco, California. Prior to becoming an academic administrator, Dean Crawford was a tenured member of the faculty at Tulane University. That's where my guest, Robbie Wilson, went to school, where he served as the law school's Robert C. Cudd Professor of Environmental Law. Before that, he was, among other roles, a tenured member of the faculty at the Georgia State University College of Law, where he founded and co-directed the Center for the Comparative Study of Metropolitan Growth. In the classroom, Dean Crawford has taught real property law, as well as a wide range of land use and environmental law courses. Outside of his work, Crawford is an avid gardener and enjoys biking, not cycling, biking. There's a difference, trust me. Having spent time in the region before, he is excited to make new memories in the area Please welcome Colin Crawford to Club 99.
Thank you, Ross, and welcome to Club 99, Colin. In line with our Rotary Year theme of Global Hearts, Local Hands, I've decided to use my President's Minute to highlight Rotary clubs around the globe. There are more than 46,000 clubs worldwide, and we'll take a minute to learn about one other club a week from their history, membership, or special projects they support. This week, we'll be looking at where it all started, Rotary Club 1 in Chicago, Illinois. Club 1 was actually founded February 23rd, 1905 by Paul Harris and 5 of his business friends as a business networking group. They created much of the lore that exists in Rotary today. Arthur Sheldon created the first motto, "He profits most who serves best." Montague Bear designed the Rotary Wheel to represent the rotating meeting location between each of their offices, and Herbert Taylor wrote the four-way test. Let's go, Hogs. As a group, they went on to establish Rotary International in 1910. Today, Club 1 boasts over 100 members, and their Club 1 Foundation continues to drive their service, highlighted by Job 1, a summer internship providing over 500 internships a year in partnership with the city and Chicago public school districts. They are approaching their 20th year of this project in 2025. And so today, we will toast the Rotary Club of Chicago, Club 1 Rotary, for continuing the legacy of our founders. Now, I'll invite Membership Engagement Chair Kathleen Lawson to the podium to introduce today's program. Kathleen?
Hello. It's my pleasure to introduce a remarkable leader and someone I've had the privilege to know and work alongside. Randy Zook, the President and CEO of the Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce and the Associated Industries of Arkansas, brings a wealth of experience and a profound commitment to our community. Before taking the helm at the State Chamber, Randy served as the Deputy Director of Administration and Finance for the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. His impressive career spans over 3 decades at Atlantic Envelope Company in Atlanta, Georgia, where he rose to the position of President and CEO. I first got to know Randy when I was a member of Leadership Arkansas Class 11. His dedication, insight, and genuine passion for economic development left a lasting impression on me, and I consider it a gift that I have been able to continue to work alongside Randy in my role as Executive Director at Economics Arkansas. Randy, a former chair of our board, continues to serve our organization in very impactful ways, a great example of how his community contributions extend beyond his professional roles. Randy's influence is felt not just in the boardroom, but also in his personal life. He and his wife, Diane, are proud parents of 3 grown children and grandparents to 5 extraordinary grandchildren.
Hey.
Today, we're fortunate to hear from Randy as he shares valuable updates on economic development.
Have a good day.
Please join me in welcoming Randy Zook.
This is going to be interesting. It's great to be with you. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to talk about a little report that we've been passing around the state on a sort of a tour, I guess you would call it, to try to understand where we are competitively and where we need to try to go and where some opportunity points are. So let me kind of, let's see, there we go. I'm going to make 2 points today. This is the first one. Number one, Arkansas is more competitive economically today than we have ever been. To wit, the American Legislative Exchange Council, a national sort of political and economics mix organization based in DC, has recently ranked us 15th most competitive state in the nation, and this is now the 2nd year that's been their measure. 2 years in a row, we've been ranked 15th, punching well above our fighting weight as a population base or as an economic center. And these are the rankings that they use. Now, I know it's difficult to read these at distance, but the reason we like the ALEC measure is that they use the same metrics every year. They don't move the goalposts, they don't change the measurements, they don't change their methodology. They measure the same economic data every year, year over year, and now I think this is their 18th year's ranking. On the three on the left, it measures absolutes like population growth, and we'll talk about that in just a minute at length. Population growth and gross domestic product growth, just how much economic output is a state producing. The column on the right gets down in the weeds pretty far. The one on the left measures economic performance, and on the right is economic outlook. Outlook gets into tax rates, property tax considerations, utilities, measurable, not qualitatively assessed data. So you can understand exactly what's going on and where in a state or a region. So that's why we like this one. It stays the same. The measuring data stays the same. They've recently, in this same report, ranked us 4th best performing state in terms of recently enacted tax changes. And we're going to get into taxes at length in just a minute. But that's pretty good, 4th best performance, and that was done before this latest round of income tax cuts, both individual as well as corporate. So here we are, 4th best performing state in the country on a pretty important measure. This one absolutely surprised me a great deal. This is measuring 22 over 21 economic performance. Arkansas had the 9th fastest growing economy in the country. We grew by over 11% in that year-over-year comparison. This is 22 over 21. The 23 over 22 numbers show that we're still in the top 15 or 20, but really dramatic growth compared to all the surrounding states, even competitively compared to Texas, which is always the toughest one to compete with. But that's pretty healthy. The pie is getting bigger. The economy is improving and strengthening. People are finding more and more opportunities in Arkansas. People are addressing those opportunities, investing capital, and it's just a really kind of a sweet spot for all of us right now in terms of our economic outlook. Economic growth, the holy mantra, I guess the holy grail in economic development. How do we accelerate economic growth? One measure is job gains. This one shows the growth in jobs in a state since 2020, and I'll read it for you. We are even, actually we're slightly, just 1/10 of a point ahead of Texas since 2020. We've seen a 6.3% growth in the jobs in the state since 2020. Texas is 1 point behind us. I think it's 6.2% for last year. Again, much stronger performance than we might expect when you look at it on a statewide basis. We all hear about the promised land, Northwest Arkansas, everything's blowing, the lid off. Yes, it's true, and boy, aren't we fortunate that we have them as neighbors and as sort of the engine that's pulling the rest of the state. But you go around the state, not just Northwest, North Central, Northeast, South Central, Southwest, and certainly Central Arkansas, all are having really good results and seeing good results in economic growth and economic development. Louisiana last year since 2020 has actually lost jobs. So all of this is not a given. It's a competitive world, it's a competitive economy, and we are doing well as a result of some important policy changes, and I'll get to those in just a second. At the same time, our biggest challenge remains labor shortage. We just don't have enough people with the right skills in the right places at the right time. We are pressed and challenged in every sector of the economy to find enough talent to really take full advantage of all the opportunities in our economy right now. And it starts with healthcare, it's transportation, it's everything, just every part of the economy. We've got about a little over 2.2 jobs for every person who's available in the workforce right now. And that is one of the root causes of our challenge. We've got one of the lowest labor force participation rates in the country. We've got way too many people who are on the sideline for no good reason. They're not in school, they're not working, they're not looking for work, they're not in prison, they're not disabled. They're just out of the workforce. It's a big number, and the most perplexing one in that, when you break that down, is the age group of males from 16 to 59, I think it is the data that we get. But it's pretty weird, it's pretty crazy. You've got about 65,000 on the sideline individuals across the state with a 57 and some change % participation rate compared to the national average of 62 to 63%. So that gap, that 5%, that 5-point gap between who's in the workforce and who's on the sideline is challenging. So there's a lot of opportunity embedded in all that. How do we get those folks off the sideline and in place and taking jobs that are readily available and are going begging because of this factor? I mentioned population growth. I just pulled these numbers. This is the change in population since 2020. Actually, this chart shows, the bubble chart shows 22 over 23, but let me talk about since 20. We are growing at about 75% faster rate, population-wise, since 20 than we did between 2010 and 2020. Now, there's a story in there. The 2020 census, if you want to verify this, just jump on Google and go to U.S. Census 2020 and see what undercount, use those words. You'll find that during that 2020 census, we missed 5% of the people in Arkansas. Already here, we just didn't count them. That 5% is a very costly outcome. It's costing us in the hundreds of millions of dollars of federal revenue that doesn't get turned back through the cities and counties. And you don't get a mulligan on this measure. We can't make it up until we get to 2030. So we're halfway there on doing the next census, but you can see where the population challenges are in Arkansas. Start in the northeast, Mississippi County, and go all the way down to Miller County. Everything below that line, every county is showing population declines. Think about this, and every county, just about every county above that line is showing population increases, some of it rather dramatic. But think about the challenges if you're a public official, a city official or a county official in any of those counties in that eastern third, southeastern third. Fewer folks means less of everything. Fewer sewer connections, water connections, churches, restaurants, car dealers, movie theaters, schools, houses, just you name it. Less of everything. Less tax revenue, despite the increase in the value of the farmland in that eastern third of the state. It's just not enough to offset the decline in population. These are really deep, very challenging issues that face these counties and cities. The northwestern section, almost 2/3, booming in many places. If you haven't been to Bentonville in the last 2 years, you haven't been to Bentonville. There's a new Bentonville up there, and there are more cranes operating in Benton County, Arkansas right now than there are in Manhattan. I don't know what that means, but it was an interesting comparison. By the way, y'all do know that every statistic quoted by a public speaker in America today 72% of them are made up on the spot. Or maybe it was 62, I can't remember. Anyway, the headline here is we are the 14th fastest growing population state in the country. Think about that. We rank, just on an absolute basis, about 34th. We're right behind, I think the one right above us right now is, it may be Nebraska or maybe Kansas. But we're 34th largest population, a little over 3 million people, about 3,011,000 on the Census Bureau's count in 2020, but it should have been, what, 3,160,000. Well, the base we started from, 3,011,000, we're adding about 1,400 people a month to the population of the state. Now, sure, the bulk of it, not all of it, not most, well, yes, most of it, over half, is in Northwest, Benton County and Washington County and now Madison County. Those are the 3 of the 5 fastest growing counties in the state. But 1,400 people a month, that's about 17 or 18,000 a year. We're adding Bryant every year, is a good way to think about that. Now, Bryant, pretty well-developed place, lots of houses, lots of capital investment, lots of infrastructure, more houses, more sewer lines, more streets, more everything. So we've got to accommodate that growth spread across the state, at least in the growing areas, every year. So this is a huge upside and a driver of our economy to have this level of population growth. You know, there are 2 ways to drive the economy, 2 sources of economic growth. One is population growth. More people means more everything. More cars, more shoes, more clothes, more pork, more everything. So that's one way. And there are only 2 ways to grow population. And one of them is a whole lot more fun than the other one. The big one nationally now is immigration. Much of it illegal, out of control, problematic. We got to figure out a solution to it. We got to find the political will to figure out how to reform our immigration system. But we're not having enough babies. Absolutely. Our birth rate in the U.S. is now below the replacement rate. So we're going to have to figure out the immigration thing to continue to have the labor source, the labor supply to drive the world's largest economy. And it's going to be a challenge, and obviously it is. It's been a mess for several years, and we just can't find the way to get to a solution. Hopefully we will soon, though. But think about that, 14th fastest growing state in the nation, driving our economy and making good things happen. The other point I want to make, one is we're incredibly competitive compared to where most of us think we are. And secondly, I want to make the point that policy matters. Government policy has an enormous influence on business conditions and whether or not we grow, and if we grow, how fast we grow or how slowly we grow. To say nothing, leave the Fed out of it. All of the other government agencies and entities influence the capacity and the rate at which the economy grows or does not. Now let me jump into some of that. Here's one that nobody thinks about at all, unemployment insurance. This is a cost borne 100% by employers. Employees pay nothing for what they too often perceive as a benefit. It's not a benefit, it's an insurance policy against the likelihood or lack of probability of losing a job through no fault of your own. A plant closes, a business goes out of business, whatever. You are not responsible for that, but you suffer the consequences. So we've had this unemployment insurance program since the 30s in place, financed 100% as a tax on payroll. And that tax in Arkansas has declined since coming out of the last recession from $417 a person to $68, $350 per year less per employee for employers. This is a big deal. This is $420 million of reduced cost to Arkansas employers. And nobody talks about it. and a balance, the blue line, coming out of the 08-09 recession, we had to borrow money to cover the benefits that we owed to unemployed people as a result of the recession. At one point, we owed $360 million to the Department of Labor. We had to make that up, pay that off, and then rebuild the trust fund to fund future benefits in downturns, and that balance has now reached just under $1 billion. The highest balance we had ever had prior to this was about $300 million. So there's $1 billion sitting in a, it's kind of like all the gold in California is in a bank in Beverly Hills. Well, this money is all in an account at the Department of Labor. Thank goodness. Otherwise, a lot of folks at the legislature would be trying to figure out a way to get their hands on it. It's just congenital. Once you get into to one of those offices, you think all of the money is yours to spend. It's a big deal. It's a big improvement, reduced cost. Here's another one. Our workers' comp system in Arkansas is far less expensive for employers, for covered employees, than the rest of the country. Andrew's giving me the thumbs up. Look at the national average, costs $414 per covered worker. Arkansas, $194. Doesn't sound like that big a deal until you do the math. It's $254 million a year lower cost for Arkansas employers than if we were at the national average. So this is a good thing, another $250 million to the good. Third lowest cost system in the country. Now here's the one that really gets all the headlines. This is the sequence of income tax, both individual and corporate, over the last few years, few sessions, step by step and year by year, and it shows you the reduced burden for income taxes for individuals as a result of each of those session activities. Now start with the premise that not shown here, two issues that are very important. One is the exemption for state sales tax on groceries. Lots of states tax groceries. That's worth about $300 to $325 million a year to Arkansas taxpayers. And it doesn't even show up on here. But starting in 15, we simplified the brackets, reduced the rates for middle income earners. That was worth about $100 million. Came back in 17, reduced the rates for low income workers or employees. That's another $50 million. Came along in 19 and made the first rate reductions for individual and corporate down to 5.9%, put in place the remote seller sales tax system where internet purchases, I know most of y'all probably dutifully filled out a form every time you ordered something from Amazon and paid a sales tax, calculated it carefully, wrote a check, and mailed it to DF&A. Didn't you? I sure as hell didn't. Anyway, that's a big deal. That's about $350 million a year of sales tax revenue that was leaking away from our retailers. We also extended the net operating loss carry-forward period, which had been limited to 5 years. Now it's 10 years. We're going to try to come back and take that out to 15, maybe 20, because the national rate and the national provision there is unlimited. You can carry forward operating losses forever on your individual on company, on a corporate income tax. In 21, here came the mother of all tax reductions. $500 million took our individual rate down, top rate down to 4.9%, our corporate rate to 5.3%, put in place the state and local tax exemption provisions to allow you to deduct your state and local taxes for pass-through entities at the entity level, saving you $50 million in federal income tax as a business, and then cleaned up the remote worker sourcing income tax rules. Next, in 23, we came back for another dip, another cut. took the individual tax rate from 4.9 down to 4.4, and the corporate rate from 5 point whatever it was, 3 down to 4.8, half a point on each one. Another 471 million, and then this year in a special session, we now have an individual, top individual income tax rate below 4%, 3.9%, a 3 handle. Very important to political types who are comparing and trying to understand what we need to do to invite or entice even more capital formation and investment. And the corporate rate is now down to 4.3. We are very competitive with all the states with which we really compete now. At 3.9 and at 4.3, we're very competitive. We're not zero like Texas on individual and corporate, but you know, you don't pay 4 times what you're paying today on property tax on your home or business property. We're not zero like Tennessee is on individual, but they do have a corporate tax rate. But again, we're not paying nearly 11%, I think, on sales tax in Tennessee. They're the second highest, and we're the third highest on state and local sales tax rates. So add all that up. Wait a minute, this was another slide here. Why is this important? Well, it's clear that lower taxes mean faster economic growth, and that's what we're chasing. You can see the red line shows Arkansas's gross general revenue collections, even with all those income tax reductions on the blue lines, even with all those reductions, the economy is growing faster and spinning off or throwing off more than enough general revenue to fund everything we want to do as a state government. And we continue to have surpluses year after year after year. Those surpluses are money that arguably should be left in your pocket, in my pocket, in everybody's pocket. And that's what we're trying to make sure we do. All those income tax cuts, corporate and individual, amount to, call it $1.8 billion a year. That's a lot of money. In addition to that, we've eliminated or reduced what's called business input taxes on our manufacturers competitively that amount to about 170 million more in reduced burden for those manufacturing businesses. That's sales taxes on utilities. That's also sales taxes on repair parts for machinery and equipment. If you're a farmer and have to replace an engine in a combine or a tractor, you ought not to have to pay sales tax on it. And likewise, if you lose a part on a machine in a manufacturing plant, you shouldn't have to pay sales tax on it. And we've also put in place the elimination of what's called the throwback rule, and I won't bore you with what that is, but it's goofy, and it needs to go away, and it hurts us, especially with our defense contractors in South Central Arkansas. It's a tax imposed on them that they don't pay in other states where they have plants, so we have to compete. We have a bogey when we're competing with, say, a plant in Marietta, Georgia, or Fort Worth that we shouldn't have in place. That'll phase out by 2030, and it's about 70 million a year right now. In addition, we've made tax procedure improvements up until about a year and a half ago. If you had a dispute with Department of Finance Administration, it went before another employee. If an auditor dinged you and said, you need to pay sales tax on this or income tax or whatever, if you didn't agree and wanted to dispute it, you had to go before another employee of DF&A. And guess what? 99% of the time, guess who won? DF&A. We've got this now where we have a 3-person tribunal. It's called the Independent Tax Appeals Commission, 2 lawyers and 1 CPA. That's who settles these disputes now, and the taxpayer, since these protests began going to that entity, the taxpayer is now winning about 30% of the time. Much improved, much more objective, much more reasonable, much fairer ultimately, and that's a good thing. So where do we stand? Now, you can't see this. Despite all those reductions, your per capita state and local tax burden in Arkansas is still the highest by just a little bit, but nevertheless higher than all the competing states. Our toughest competitor, as you can see up there, is Tennessee. Our per capita state and local tax burden amounts to $5,031 a year for every man, woman, and child, maybe even three-legged dogs, across the state. Tennessee, it's about $4,030-something. So $1,000 a year lower cost or burden to live in Tennessee compared to Arkansas. Texas, our toughest competitor, is just slightly, I mean, maybe a good lunch behind us. And that's competitive, but it's a moving target. That's the message here. We're making dramatic policy changes, dramatic tax reductions. Nevertheless, the other guys are equally competitive. They are trying to get the same capital investments we're after, and it is a highly, ask Bob Birch or Robert Birch, it's a highly competitive game, and one where you gotta play to stay. On top of all that, look at the infrastructure and economic development changes we've made. We have a very well predictably funded highway construction system now, thanks to that half-cent permanent sales tax we put in place, plus the rebate of federal fuel taxes. We're investing a bodacious, is the only word I can come up with, amount of money in highways across the state. If you look at the just released State Transportation Improvement Plan, the STIP from RDOT, we're fixing to commence to build some highways and improve some highways. Look, you don't have to look too far behind us right there to see how that's playing out. And one of these days, you might even be able to get all the way to the Garland County line without risking your life and limb. It might happen. I may not live to see it. I hope my grandchildren do. That's one heck of a contract. That's all I can tell you. At the same time, we're putting about $1.6 billion in making sure that everybody in Arkansas has access to high-speed internet connectivity. This is just an absolutely basic, fundamental requirement to be a participant in today's economy, an education process for that matter. We passed the 97th Amendment a couple of 3 elections back, which makes it easier to do economic development projects. We're going to do another round of that at the legislature in the upcoming session to make the incentive packages that we have to offer more competitive, more appealing, and at the same time, we're encouraging local economic development entities, cities, counties, multi-unit, whatever, regional efforts to get more sites ready for development. Shovel ready, not, gee, it's just got a few trees on it and we don't have a sewer line out there yet and the highway doesn't run out there and there's not a railroad within 25 miles of it, but it's a heck of a piece of property and be a great place for you to put a manufacturing plant. You can be up and running in about 3 years. Doesn't work. Shovel ready today, we just don't have enough sites in that condition across the state. I mean, every region of the state. We've got to do a better job of that. By the way, there's a blurb, a bullet point there about the steel industry. How many of you have been to Mississippi County, have been to Osceola or Blytheville in the last 5 years? How many have not? Most of you. You need to make a trip. After you get back from Bentonville, plan to go to Mississippi County. We are just about to start up, I was over there last week, and we're just about to start up the largest capital investment in the history of the state of Arkansas, the number 2 Big River Steel, but soon to be called U.S. Steel Mill. It's unreal, the scope and the scale of that thing. By the way, it'll take 1,300, no, let me make up this number right quick. It'll take about 1,650 people to staff it. And by the way, if you get hired, you start at about $110,000 a year. You can be 19 years old, right out of high school, go through an 8-month training program at Arkansas Northeastern College and go to work at $110,000 to $120,000 a year. Think about that. $1,650 to staff the new plant. They've got 1,300 already hired. The unfortunate thing is most of them do not live in the state of Arkansas. They drive into the mill, work 4 12-hour shifts, and go home for 4 days, or 4 days on, 4 days off, year-round. 120 to 150 a year. Think about that. You're 19, 20 years old, $120,000 paycheck. What do you do what's the first thing you do? You head to a Ford dealer or a Chevrolet dealer, and you buy something serious. And then you go get a boat, and then you go get, it's just amazing the earning opportunity that those jobs in those mills present. It's fantastic to see. That's now the #1 steel-producing county in the United States. Not Indiana, not Ohio, not Pennsylvania, not West Virginia, Arkansas. #1 steel-producing county in the U.S. So who benefits from all this? The premise here, the theory is it states that tax less, grow faster, states that tax more, grow slower. Here's the evidence. There are the high tax states on the left, Maryland, California, Washington, Connecticut, New York. Here are the lower tax, faster growing states on the right. Florida, Arkansas, Tennessee, Texas, North Dakota. So that's the impact of all these tax reductions, these cost reductions and burden reductions. And here's what happens. You get more capital available for reinvestment in a business. Ultimately, you get higher employee wages. You get faster economic growth. You get more jobs. You get better jobs all across the state. That's my sermon. Guess we get past the plate, but thank you for paying attention. I'm happy to take any questions or comments you might want to make or have, or just don't throw a roll. Anybody? Yes, ma'am. Lisa.
On the way, Lisa. Like Phil Donahue.
Thank you. So in the southern counties that are seeing that decrease in population, do you have any idea if the lithium play will help reverse any of that, or is it too soon to tell? Kind of what do you predict with that?
Let me be as optimistic but realistic as I can. The lithium play, assuming that the electrification of the transportation sector doesn't get derailed, which is a risk, or at least slowed, the lithium play will be a boon to South Arkansas. We have the potential to supply 15% of the world's demand for lithium from the Smackover Formation in South Arkansas. If ExxonMobil, Tetra, and Lanxess Chemical, Standard Lithium's partner, all three execute fully on their in-place plans, we will see 6,000 to 8,000 direct jobs driven by those three entities. And then on top of that, transportation that's just mind-boggling, because you're going to have to rail that stuff or truck it out of there one way or the other. It's a big time. Hopefully we'd end up with a battery plant somewhere south of I-30, because there's no point in schlepping lithium iodide. Let me get it right. I knew I should have gone to chemistry class. You take lithium iodide out of the bromine, or out of the brine stream that's currently pumped up to produce bromine and other products, and you refine it into lithium carbonate. And then lithium carbonate is packed into these lithium ion batteries as the medium for storage of electricity. So it has enormous potential. That said, it ain't going to happen overnight. It's not going to be like the Fayetteville Shale was. The Fayetteville Shale was, boom, here we go. And the faster we act, the faster we get it out and sell it. And, you know, you've seen a reduced level of activity up there, primarily driven by the price, incidentally. The Fayetteville shale play is not over. It's just slowed down because of the price of natural gas. It's down below $2 per MCF. So it's, you know, they're not making any money up there. So they're not drilling. But if it goes to $5 or $6, you'll see another round of, you actually re-drill those wells and shoot another radial out from an existing site. So that's more than you wanted to know, I know, but I get off on one of these things, and it's hard to come to an end. But on the lithium thing, it will be a long-term play, and it will be dramatic, and it will be challenging, and it will be absolutely dynamite, assuming lithium it remains in great demand. I would point out that Albemarle, the largest supplier, producer of lithium in the world right now, has a huge facility in Magnolia, just added another $500 million investment to it, and their stock's down 71% since the first of the year. By the way, I appreciate all of you that have not been checking your 401k with a 550-point jump in the Dow this morning going underway. Record-setting day. Does that answer your question, Lisa? Okay. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Ellen.
Ellen, here you go.
If you look at the map, that is the delta, and that is where Agri in Arkansas exists, where you're losing all the population. How do you continue to have Agri as the #1 producer, economic driver in the state when you don't have population there to undermine or to support that system?
Well, first of all, you don't cover it all up with solar panels, so you can't grow anything anymore. That's the first thing, okay? Boy, I could go somewhere right now and get in real trouble. I won't. Secondly, we're going to have to solve the problem. We're going to look, H-2A visas are the way. You go to Northeast Arkansas, half the people you run into are from South Africa or Romania or Honduras or somewhere in there. They're on H-2A visas. And, you know, we're so smart, we want to cut them off. Well, who's going to do that? Same thing in your part of the world, my part of the world, Southeast Arkansas. We're going to have to bring people in from around the world who are obviously clamoring to get here and put them in place to be able to do those jobs and do that work and earn that money and pay taxes and have kids and, you know, do all that good stuff. Yes, sir, John.
Randy, talk about trade schools or the lack thereof.
Biggest opportunity, short-term, in not just Arkansas, but in the U.S. Many of you know we have an outfit that it's a sudden 8-year overnight success called Be Pro, Be Proud. We've got a couple of mobile workshops. That would be called a truck and a trailer, but the fancy word is a mobile workshop that has 15 virtual reality and simulator experience stations on it to give kids 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, pre-college, whatever, pre-graduation, to give them a taste of what that kind of work looks like and how you do it, and more importantly, how much money you can make doing it, like steel mills. You know, about half the time when I speak to career and technical ed teachers, and I mention the steel mills and say $110,000 a year, they all want to take out a pen. They say, "Where's the HR department?" But if we learn anything from COVID, it's that lots of jobs are essential to the U.S. economy. It's not just white collar, degree, kind of, you know, careers. Look, I am all in on college education. I am all in on 4-year education for the people for which it is right. But 60% of the kids that come out of high school today will never graduate. Most of them will never cross the street to go to a 4-year institution and don't need to. but they have to have something post-high school. Post-secondary ed, a 3-month program, a 6-month program, a 1-year program, and you can be prepared to earn a handsome living in today's U.S. economy. We've got to have people who know how to operate a water system. I don't know if you saw the article in the paper recently. 60% of the people that are taking the water operator licensing test flunk it. You got a lot of little communities that don't have a licensed water system operator. Basic stuff like that, to say nothing of electricians and sheetrockers and plumbers and pipe fitters and truck drivers and you name it. And go to a hospital. Is there a doc in the house? Go to a hospital and look at the number for every admitting physician on the staff of the hospital. There's 35 to 45 people that aren't MDs that are working in that hospital. Some of them with some kind of 2-year program, but many of them with a 6-month or a 1-year program. There are lots of electricians, HVAC, elevator guy. Do you know what it costs to get an elevator mechanic to come service an elevator? The house call is $1,500. I made that one up. It's bodacious. That dude is well paid, let me put it that way. Yes, ma'am.
You spoke about we have quite a few people that are not working and not looking for work, and I'm sure some of those are parents, probably especially moms who are home.
How much did Lisa pay you to set this up?
Yeah. Could you talk about the need for more quality, affordable childcare to get some of those folks back to work?
One of the most intractable challenges that potential employees face, especially for manufacturing plants or any kind of business where you have to go there to do it. It can't be done electronically. It can't be done remotely. You got to go there. You know, you can't gut chickens remotely. You got to go, and you got to stand there and you got to do it. Well, one of the toughest problems facing potential employees is adequate, reasonable, dependable childcare. And look, this is a bear to the point that I'm scared. I'm almost scared to talk about it because somebody's going to have to pay for it. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Who's going to pay for it and how you're going to pay for it? But I've got an employee who works remotely from Fayetteville who has 2 infants, one I guess now about 11 or 12 months and one maybe 3. Her monthly child care bill is $2,200 a month. Now that's really good, high quality child care, but you know, that's a big ticket. It's bigger than their mortgage. And it doesn't last forever. You know, children reach an age where they're less costly to supervise or oversee, but getting there is a real challenge. And if you're in Desha County, I can just tell you, you are challenged to find somebody you're willing to leave your children with at a price you're able to pay. Now, people say, well, companies ought to pay it. No, wait a minute. Companies might not ought to pay for it. If I underwrite this employee's $2,200 a month, does everybody else in the office want a $2,200 raise because she's got 2 kids? These are not easy solutions. There aren't, but but it is a big deal. I'm mindful of. I know you got break for the door at 1 o'clock, so I did that for about 20
We've got time for a couple
yes,
more.
Kenny.
Randy, thank you for committing to make our state great and better.
Sure.
So tell me quickly about you. Where you went to high school, where you went to college, and what organization made you so special?
I owe it all to my wife, Diane.
Good answer.
Look, I grew up in southeast Arkansas, McGee, you know. Left there, went to Arkansas Tech for a couple of years. Spent a Jack Kerouac summer between freshman and sophomore years hitchhiking to northeast Oregon to work the English pea harvest. with a bunch of college kids and winos from San Francisco. That was the only thing they did. They'd lay up and drink hot Olympia beer and pick English peas the rest of the time. But anyway, that was an adventure. Graduated, came to Little Rock, went to work for First Amendment Life Insurance Company. Thought I was somebody, got in a management training program in the investment department, and the first task they gave me was to go to Eden Isle and inventory the marina at the Red Apple Inn. That means count the plastic worms and count the fish hooks and all that kind of stuff. That's what I went to college for. Anyway, from there, I went to work for Atlantic Envelope and, spent 34 years in that business and failed retirement. Talked Maria Haley into hiring me as her deputy for about 1.5 years. And a couple of guys came by one day and said, why don't you come over here and run this state chamber for us? We need somebody for a couple of years while we find somebody that knows what they're doing. Think about that. How can you resist that kind of offer? That was 16 years ago. So, that's how I got involved in this. And I just love what I'm doing. It's fun. And one of the solutions to our employment thing is a whole lot of people are going to have to work a lot longer than they think they're going to have to work, or they should work a lot longer than they think they ought to work. If you're healthy, you got to do something. You got to be somewhere. You might as well be doing something interesting and worthwhile while you're at it. Or, I could be a professional senior level pickleball player. That may be my next gig. I'm done. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Randy, thank you for your time today. It's great to hear that positivity around Arkansas. As a thank you to our presenter, we've commissioned local Sage Holland, a master bead maker out of Mountain Home, Arkansas, to make a commemorative bead representing our Rotary Year theme of Global Hearts, Local Hands. Hopefully it'll serve as a pleasant reminder of your time with our club. Next week, we will welcome a panel of Club 99ers for a primer on the African island of Madagascar in preparation of our Ottenheimer Exchange program. They are coming next month. And with that, we are adjourned. We'll see you next week.